Hello, everybody. Matt, wake up. It's time to do the show. I know we're casual. We ain't that casual. Come on. Get up. Let's go.
I'm getting up.
Get up. It's time
Uh,
for sports. Thank you, everybody,
yeah,
tuning in. I'm Alec Caberna. That's Matt Morrison over there. And we got another one here, guys. It's Tuesday, and no Mike Wolfgang today. He'll be back tomorrow. Only day he's missing today is just today. So we're good to go. We got a big week coming up here. We got some fun basketball stuff today, and we're gonna come out with our first ever college basketball top 10, just like we do with football. We're gonna do it here with college basketball as well. So make sure you stay tuned. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk a lot of college basketball today. We're just gonna talk one NFL thing. NFL, a lot of it that's gonna get moved on to Monday's show. So Tuesday, it's gonna be college basketball. It's gonna take over here, Matt. But let's get into our high school recap this past weekend. We had the absolute pleasure going up to Perry High School, beautiful facility. We get to go back there again this
yeah,
next weekend, but this past weekend, Girard put on a show. The final score wasn't very close, but you felt the entire time that it was one play away from being an absolute ball game. And Girard was playing the Cinderella. They were the 12 seed going against the 4, and you had to feel the whole time that they were kind of playing from behind, and then they fall down to the scoreboard. That first quarter, it's scoreless. Then from here on out, both teams just started countering each other's touchdowns, and it was a big lead taken to the half from Perry. Girard stormed back in the second. They brought in what was the name of their quarterback? Nick Bengala, and he had a fantastic second quarter. They put him in there instead of Tristan Valley, and he was going off. And I think if they'd started him in the beginning of that game and left him in, they probably stood a better chance of making that one a little bit closer. But that Perry squad, they were absolutely dominant. That was an amazing performance they put on, and all credit to them. But phenomenal season for Girard. It wraps up here in the playoffs, but they can't be disappointed with this one too much. They obviously, got ran over a little bit. They lose by 20, but it was a lot closer than a 20-point game. What do you think? You were down there on the sidelines in the
yeah,
cold
I
with
was
the two
down there.
teams.
Oh
What
man, it
what
was
was the feel down there in
freezing
the
down
field?
there. It's freezing down there. I was on the Perry side for a little bit, and they were all like looked very confident, going into this game. And then you go back on the Girard side, it looked like some tensions were high. It looked like they were not in the zone. And then later in that third quarter, that whole Girard sideline was going crazy because they were making a comeback. They made it back and made it closer. And then when that happened, I went over to the Perry side again, and it wasn't the same. They were like silent. They're like, okay, we can't. We were screwing around. We need to get back into what we were doing, and that's what they ended up doing. But Girard, great effort to make a comeback. And Nick Bengala, they put him in. He had like 114 yards passing, and then he had 14 carries for 114 yards rushing as well.
Yeah, right.
With
Yeah,
the
he had a
touchdown.
complete game.
So
2 touchdowns, 1 interception
so
total for him, and he was a big part. And I think we were kind of talking about it on the broadcast. Me and CJ was the dynamity of bringing Ben Gallon to that offense, and unfortunately they came up short. Maybe if they'd gone with him the whole game, but they obviously liked what they saw out of Tristan Valley, and they're going to get both these guys back next year, and it should be a fun season next year for Girard, and I expect him to be probably in a higher ranking come next postseason. And this is a team that can very easily make a run. They have all the talent. They were just there a few years ago, so don't count this team out just because they took a loss here to a very good Perry squad. You look at that Perry squad, their defense was allowing just about 8 points per game on the season. They were phenomenal, and they have a tough one coming up against YSN's West Branch, who has been dominant, undefeated, 12-0, a 1 seed, and that one should be potentially one of the best matchups I think we might see all playoff long. I mean, you look at those two teams, just they're so even, and you just see how these two teams are coming into this game. You just have a feeling that could be one for the ages. But congrats to Girard, of course, on making their postseason run here.
yeah.
They come up just short of some regional semifinals, but outstanding effort put in throughout the season, getting to where they were and working with some young guys, and they're going to come back next year stronger than ever. And I'm excited to see what they can come out with.
Yeah, me too. There should be no. They shouldn't be ashamed of themselves. They had a great first of all, they really weren't favored in that first round, and they upset Gilmore, who was a 5 seed, and then they
Yeah.
come in against Perry, and they give them a battle. So
And that's what you're looking for out of your underdog. I mean, this was a coming in was at the end of the season they were 6-3. They get the win in the first round over the 5 seed, as you were saying there. Then they have to take on a tough Perry on the road in that phenomenal stadium, completely different environment. And I think the one thing was it didn't help it was cold. When you're playing out of your environment and the temperatures start dropping, it gives a little bit of an edge to that home team because they're familiar of where they are. And sometimes, when you're cold, your brain starts, beating in on itself, and it's hard to concentrate. I know it's happened to us a few times in the booth. Our first season, we didn't realize how cold it was going to get, in those first few games that we saw, and it shocked us there for a second. It happens to players too. I mean, you see it at all levels. Their first time really playing in the cold, especially on the road in a tough environment like that, they can get shell-shocked, and it's kind of what you kind of saw in that first half. They got shell-shocked. They didn't give up. They kept fighting through it, but that conditions, I think, kind of hurt them just a little bit too much. And for those of you wondering, the West Branch versus Perry game this coming Friday will take place just down the road here from Youngstown State at Boardman Stadium. So should be a fun one there, and go West Branch. And that one, hope YSN continues to get lots of teams rolling in. We won an all YSN
Absolutely.
state championship.
Oh, yeah.
Can't happen, but that would be the best case scenario, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And West Branch. Their last game, Poland really kind of brought to them a little bit. It looks like they pulled away at the end, but 33-21. They'll have their hands full against Perry, so hopefully they'll pull through.
Yeah, and I think it's that first quarter. If West Branch jumps on them early, it should be West Branch's game to lose, with the way that Perry's offense really takes a while to get going. Once they get going, they're unstoppable. But if you can slow down that start, like we saw Girard do, you give yourself a chance, and that's probably what's going to happen with West Branch. They have a dominant defense, and their offense has been scoring off the chains all season long. So I got no problems thinking West Branch, if they can dominate that first quarter, this one should be all theirs. But let's move in here. NFL, Monday Night Football, another great one. Every game this season so far, I believe, has come within a one-possession ball game on Monday night. So this one, no exception. Bears nearly pulled this one over the Steelers' head, and a few referee things that happened. It is what it is. Steelers come out with the win. At the end of the day, the win is a win. That's all that matters, is what that final scoreboard says. And I think you just get a few takeaways from this, is that Steelers, their offense is still pretty darn bad. And, that's kind of what we were talking about going into the game, and you kind of agree with me on a lot of the points I was talking yesterday. Just offense doesn't have an identity. It's slowly building, though. You feel it with the way they're getting Claypool the ball. They're bringing Washington in, getting him a lot of carries on the ground for some big end-arounds, really spreading out these defenses horizontally so they're not having to attack up the middle with an offensive line. So I think that's the biggest problem, is the offensive line still struggling. You guys replaced a lot of big names off that O-line from, the past few decades. So, right. Villanova,
Castro,
obviously.
Pouncey, even Villanova. So,
and obviously, I know a lot of Steelers fans don't like him too much, and he's overrated. But at the end of the day, he was a very good.
He was
person for you guys
for
quite some time, right? So, we're replacing a lot of guys up front, and I think that's also why you saw at the beginning of the season this team couldn't run the football. Now Najee Harris is getting those touches, and he continues to elevate every time he steps on the field, and he's fighting for every extra yard. The only thing I worry about is he's such a physical back. I just worry how quickly that's going to add up, and come postseason, if this guy becomes too banged up to go for. I would love to see this guy, make the big postseason run and carry the Steelers along, because, he had a phenomenal day on the ground. He had 22 carries and just 62 yards, but he had a lot of important runs, those short yards, 4th and 1. Hey, I just need that push right there. And he was the guy they went to time and time again to get those. So I think there was a lot of good things going on from this squad, but I think, once again, you just have to give a little bit of credit to the Bears here. They played a phenomenal game. And I think the biggest part, Justin Fields, he didn't do as bad as I thought he would. I thought going up against this defense under the pressure all night long, he's probably going to have 2 picks. He only has 1. He gets a touchdown as well through the air, near 300 yards as well, and, of course, 45 rushing yards. And I think the one thing that separates this Bears squad from being able to win a football game, they can't run the football. It's the same thing we saw in the Steelers beginning of the season. If you can't run the ball, you can't win the game. And obviously they get Montgomery with 63, Fields with 45, and Darnell Mooney put off 1 for 15, and Khalil Herbert got 13. But they just don't seem to have that guy that can take over a game like you see out of other big-name teams. I mean, you go just about anywhere across the country, and you want to see a team that can compete and when the chains are down, you know they can win. You're looking at a team that has a good running back and one that can take over the game at times. I mean, you can pretty much name any team out there with maybe a few exceptions where they know if they need some short yardage, they can hand the ball off. And out of the dominant teams, that's what you have to do. And this team feels like it's a step away. Their defense was still fairly poor in this entire game. I mean, they got outscored in every single quarter but the fourth, in which the Bears put up 21 points, which I think was the big shocker. But I really loved what I saw Justin Fields in that final drive, right? That way he was able to stay calm, stay composed, 2-minute warning, lays an absolute dart down the sideline to Allen Robinson, then comes right back other side, Darnell Mooney in the field, as he's rolling out of the pocket, finds him for a touchdown, puts his team up, and that was the part you were looking for, was put your team up, give your chance the team to win, because you see so many times with these young quarterbacks, they have a chance down at the end, but they can't do anything with it because of that. He was able to do something with it, and you love what you see coming out of Justin Fields right now, so he continues to improve, much like we're seeing, guys, Najee Harris. The more and more reps he's getting, you feel the confidence building, and they let him take shots downfield. And I think one of the big things you have coming up with Chicago Bears in this draft, if they don't find an offensive lineman in that first round early, I think the number one option for this team to pick in that first round, Chris Olave. Get Justin Fields his guy. You see what's happening right now with Joe Burrow and his guy, Jamar Chase, brought him in from LSU, part of that championship squad, his favorite target, and they have started tearing up a dominant defensive division, and the more and more they play, the better and better they seem to be, and potentially one of the next big duos. I think right now that's the Bears' strategy. Go see what the Bengals are doing and start to imitate. Go find that guy that Justin Fields loves to go to, whether that's Garrett Wilson, Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave. Go find him. Even Ruckert coming out of the draft, Cole Kmet was a great target for him. And obviously, one thing watching Ohio State football, Justin Fields loved to find his tight end over the middle of the zone, and you saw it last night with Kmet. He just sits in right in between the safeties and linebackers, and he dumps it in there. That's Justin Fields' favorite position on the field to throw the ball to. You saw it when he played at Ohio State. You see it when he plays here already with Chicago. You have to find this guy targets for him to go to.
Yes, absolutely. And, you were talking about the running backs. I like their running backs, including rookie, what's his name, Herbert. I like him. I like Montgomery, and even you throw Damian Williams in there. And that's not even mentioning, Tariq Cohen. People have forgotten about Tariq Cohen. This guy has been hurt for, a couple seasons now, and it doesn't look like he's coming back. So even if one doesn't end up working out, you can expect him to maybe come back. It doesn't look like this season. Maybe next
it looks
season,
like there's no timetable for him to return.
There's no timetable whatsoever. Maybe you add another running back, too, in case, you have to release somebody. Damian Williams is getting a little bit older. Montgomery has cemented himself as the main running back. And, like you said, the receivers, I really like – what's his name? Allen Robinson. I think he's one of the most productive receivers in this NFL. You don't hear anything coming from him either. He just goes out there and plays the game. You don't hear drama or anything from him whatsoever. He just goes out there and plays the game. And he had a good game last night, too. But
look at him on the season. He already has 339 yards, despite the fact he has just 30 receptions on the season. He's not getting targeted a lot, but now you see he's starting to get that more and more as Fields is finding rhythm. They're getting the ball downfield, and his yards per game is going up, and that average per reception is going up as well. And obviously, this is one of his down years so far, and that was going to happen coming off of a rookie quarterback coming into the game. You're not expecting him to put up the numbers of some other quarterbacks, especially he was down there on a great squad with Jacksonville, but he's had 3 1,000-yard receivings. He has over 6,000 career yardage and 40-plus touchdowns. So this is a guy I think that the Bears can obviously build on here. He's getting older, though, so timetable's ticking, and he becomes a free agent this offseason as well. So it's a guy they've got to put back pen to paper again.
Oh, absolutely.
But, Matt, I think the one thing everybody is talking about, the referees. As a Steelers fan, what were your thoughts in this game here? Obviously, I'm not a Steelers fan, not a Bears fan, obviously. I have people I like on both sides. I thought the referees were pretty awful, but they've kind of been awful all season.
They have been awful all season, and everybody's talking about that. I think everybody wants to hear about that big taunting call. And, we were talking this morning. Maybe they saw something different. I believe it was taunting. you don't. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. You don't stare down the opposing team's sideline, okay? And what are that spin kick thing he did?
The spin
I
kick was
don't
cool,
get
and that wasn't even
either.
what he got penalized for. But,
Yeah,
I was watching
but
First Take today, and one of the big things that they were saying was he had 3 celebrations after 1 sack. We get it. Emotions are high. You get
yeah,
the big stop nearing the end of the game, and if
you
that's the
sack Big Ben, we get
if
it.
that's the game-winning play, then you do that. But you still got time to go. There's still time on the clock. You can't go out there and start celebrating. Job's not done, right? And that's kind of what it
Right.
was. And I think the referee, that head official, should probably face a suspension for giving a little bit of a hit check to a player. I mean, on the other side, if you see a player go out
Yeah,
there
he
and
turned into it.
run into a referee on purpose like that, the guy's getting majorly fined out of a potential suspension. I want to see the NFL do the same thing to these players, because I think that's the part right there in this entire game everybody looks at with that referee moment and just goes, well, now this seems suspicious. Now it seems like there's something else going on. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of this, this game was rigged. It's because you saw that one moment in there, and it really kind of made you think, like, why did that referee... I mean, he
Yeah.
clearly stares him down, and then as he's running back, steps back into him. It was just like, what? What are you doing
What?
kind of moment. And
So
it's one of those that I think a lot of people around the nation kind of looked at and went,
I don't even.
what was that? That was uncalled for, and obviously it wasn't egregious. He didn't knock him down to the ground or anything, but it was just one of those moments you just have to look at and go, that was just weird to see, right? You don't see that too
Yeah,
often.
it
You see
was.
incidental contact, but not the referee purposely, stepping in front of a player like that. So it's an interesting call, and I think the one thing I've heard already from a lot of Steelers fans was, yeah, it was taunting, and I agree, it was taunting. By the way, the rules
It
is this
was.
season, it is taunting. But at the same time, all the Bears fans that are complaining about it, and the Steelers fans going, oh, come on, it was taunting. I just want to put this out there. If, say, this situation is reversed, and that's TJ Watt or Cam Hayward, and they come in there, they get the big sack on Fields, and they start dancing in the backfield, staring everybody down on the other side, and they get called on it, would you not, for the rest of that week, be saying the exact same thing all the Bears fans would be? Because I think a lot of people's answer to that would be yes. And, we have another friend who I was talking to earlier in the day. He's a Steelers fan. And I just went, hey, I just have one question. It's not literally anything. I don't care what your answer is. I'm literally just curious. If this was the opposite way around and this was your team that got that penalty called on and it cost you this game, what would your reaction be? How would you feel for the rest of the week? As a Steelers fan, I'm curious to what you would say to that.
But I would say, I mean, if that was called on us, I mean, the emotions are high. I mean, obviously. Honestly, at first, I'm like, that's not taunting. And then this morning you explained it to me more, and I realized, yeah, that was taunting. And, I mean, I know that, and there were some calls that in that game that Pittsburgh definitely got away with. I mean, I watched the highlights when I got home. I fell asleep part of the game, but I saw most of it. But there's some light hits on Fields, man, that they could have called.
They missed an egregious
They
roughing the
got Fields
passer.
pretty good.
The Fitzpatrick hit,
they
as an
messed
unbiased
Fields
person,
up.
that Fitzpatrick hit,
That hit
perfectly
was
clean. Perfectly clean. I'm like it. He's a runner.
That hit
He's
was
engaged.
clean.
They come right at each other. They both duck into it. Perfectly fine. I don't want to see any fines from that. Nothing whatsoever. That was fine. It's the other ones we're talking about, right? Fields gives himself up, slides down to the ground. It was an awkward slide, and I think that's probably why you don't get the call on it, was because him giving himself up was a little weird looking, and it was awkward, and then he gets hit from behind. I think it came in a little bit late, but I think he got the benefit of the doubt on that one. So I think that's one of those give or take calls. But that roughing the passer, they even said on the broadcast that was pretty obvious. So there were definitely some calls they got away with. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing you can say is don't line up offsides. I mean, Bears screwed themselves on this final drive because they lined up offsides, 3 plays in a row? In the same guy every single time. And you saw it before the snap.
Guy.
He's leaning over the entire way. It was ridiculous. And as either Matt or myself cuts out here, this game was one of those ones that it felt like the Bears should win, but every single time they were in a spot to win it, they kind of shot themselves in the foot. So it was an interesting game, and credit where credit is due to Big Ben out there able to pull out the win, and they just get it down there at the end. But it was definitely a big moment where you just start thinking, man, that one was close, and nearly a shocker. It was the only team that the Steelers haven't beaten since 2006, so they've now defeated every single NFL team. But let's go ahead and get right into here as Matt continues to come back. College basketball starts here tonight. And as I was saying earlier, we're going to go right into our preseason top 10 as we're waiting for Matt to get back in here. So why don't I go ahead and run down what the AP thinks. So number one on the AP was Gonzaga. They're the undisputed favorite right now. UCLA was the number 2 team. Kansas at 3. Villanova at 4. Texas at 5. Ole Miss up at 6. Purdue at 7. Baylor sits at 8. Duke sits at 9. And Kentucky at 10 here as we continue to wait for Matt to come on back in. Not sure what's happening, but with the start here tonight, we'll go ahead and go into our top 10. So coming in at number 10, Kentucky. Despite the fact they haven't won a title in now 6 seasons, they continue to recruit high. They've had a few good classes. I have them personally ranked at number 9 in my overall rankings. They bring in 2 5-star commits and 1 4-star as well, so they continue to restack their roster. I'm excited to see what's coming out of them. They're going to have some big games coming up. They have, I believe, a big one here coming up against Duke that we're going to talk to and predict later in this show. You know, they play tonight at 9:30 against the Duke Blue Devils, so that should be a fun one. This Kentucky team has a good potential to make a run. I mean, I think you kind of look around at this team and you just have to look at them and go, man, they have been right there quite recently, but I think we're just waiting for them to take that next step once again, because it just feels like they've been, in and out of it and not what they probably should be for quite some time. So they got a big game coming up, and they're predicted to finish first place in the SEC, but just 11th overall. So as they get into the season, they're going to have to make sure that they continue to produce and not have the slip-ups like we've seen in the past out of some of these big-name teams. So at number 9 in our rankings, the Boilermakers from Purdue. They have a big off season. They come in now. They're going to have some, tough games. This is the Big Ten, and it's expected to be competitive once again this season. And I think that's obviously what everybody's looking for, is that this group of teams here, the Big Ten, whoever wins it probably has a good chance of making a Final Four run. Purdue sits second and expected to finish second in the Big Ten this season, 6th overall. I like what they're showing already this year. They didn't get a master recruiting class, and I think that's the one downside for them. They're not in that top 25. Heck, they're only ranked 38. They bring in 2 4-stars, though. This isn't a big-name school that recruits high guys, but I'm expecting to see something out of this Purdue squad. They made a good run last year, and they have been consistently up there in the rankings time and time again. And at number 8, our team taking on Kentucky here tonight, the Duke Blue Devils. Now, this is a team ranked 9th in the overall rankings, but, this is a 3-person tally here. I had this team sitting all the way up at number 6 in the rankings. Both Matt and Mike had them at 8 and 9. And I saw one thing out of this team coming into the season, and that was the recruiting numbers. They finished, 5th overall in recruits, but they brought in the most 5-star guys. They brought in 4 commits overall in this last class. 3 of them were 5 stars, and 1 of them was a 4-star. They're bringing in a ton of talent, and they're bringing in even more in this next coming season as well. So this is a dangerous squad, and with a lot of young talent, they have a very good chance of running the table here. Matt, we're going down our top 10 here for college basketball. You heard everything?
Yeah, I've been hearing you for a minute here.
All right, good to know. So what are your thoughts on Kentucky, Purdue, or Duke here before we move on to the next 7?
I mean, Kentucky, they had that slow season last year, and, hopefully they can bounce back and get a better year this year. So hopefully we can see a bounce back season. And, Purdue, they had a good season last year. Hopefully they can, repeat that as well. So, yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead here and move one deeper. Number 7 in our rankings. It finished up as Villanova. They're a little bit farther back, and that's on me. I don't have them ranked. I wasn't impressed with their recruiting this offseason. I didn't think they brought a lot into the year, and I think I'm going to end up getting proved wrong with this one at the end of the day. But, you just look at this team, 22nd in recruiting. They bring in 2 4-stars and 1 3-star. But at the end of the day, it didn't feel like they had much last year. I think they're getting kind of the benefit of the doubt coming into the season because of the name, and this is obviously a team that consistently is one of the best. I just don't feel like they're going to be one of the best this season. And they're in the Big East. They're predicted to finish fifth overall, but first in their conference. So you expect them to be able to make a run, but I just don't think that they're going to look that good. I don't think the Big East is going to give them really the level of competition they should. They might finish high in the rankings going into March Madness, but I just don't feel this team is going to be one that you're going to see any big runs out of till Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually when things happen, at the end of the season, when teams make big runs. So, but I mean, you never know.
Yeah, man, you have them ranked as fifth. Mike had them at 4. They dropped back to 7 because I didn't even have them ranked here in my top 10s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, team I decided to include instead was Iowa. I liked what I saw out of them. They had a big season last year. I think the one downside of them was they didn't have any good recruiting. So that's the one downside, but they lose Garza.
Yeah.
But they got a lot of other pieces. So I put Iowa up there. I like where they sit going into the season.
Yeah, Iowa should have a great season too. I'm excited for Illinois as well with what's his name, Kofi Cogburn coming back. So that should be a great addition to them once again. Hopefully they make another run at that Big Ten title.
Right, and Iowa's only expected to finish 9th in the Big Ten this year, overall 51st in the nation, so they're not a team expected to be there, so I guess we'll see how they finish up, but I have them on the edge. I'm just waiting to see if they can continue after last season. I'm giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt coming into this one. But sitting at number 6, one of the 2 teams that finished up in the March Madness Championship, and the winner of it, Baylor. They fall back here a little bit in the initial rankings, and they brought in a 5-star and 2 4-stars in the offseason. They lost some big names, though. They're going to get some more next season, but, this is a team. They still have plenty of things to compete with, and this should be a team that should have no problem competing come this season. So what are your thoughts on Baylor?
Baylor, I mean, they won it last year, and everybody thought that they were going to lose. Everybody thought it was going to be Zaga's year, and they came in and said, no, this is our year. And that doesn't mean that they can come back and do it again. So I think they're returning most of their players. I don't think they lost too many players.
I think they only lost 1 or 2, and right now you look at the Big 12 expected standings. They have Kansas finishing in first place, 2nd overall in the nation, and then they have Texas actually finishing 2nd in front of Baylor, and Texas Tech would be the next closest team, but they are expected to finish the season unranked at 27th. So this Baylor squad, I think they're better than a lot of other teams out there, and obviously they're that last season's champion. You have to keep them in there until they give you a reason not to. Yeah. Mike had them down at 8, and they have reason for that. The recruiting wasn't great, but I think they returned enough guys, and I think they brought in enough to be able to look at this and make a run this next season.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And I was just talking about Zaga too. Don't count them out. I know we'll talk about them here in a second, but
yeah, we will. So number 5 on the list, the team that's expected to finish above Baylor in the Big 12, we have Texas sitting in there, and this is one of those teams. Another one I didn't have ranked coming into this. I don't like what they did. I have no idea why everybody has them up so high on the boards, and maybe this is the team that proves me wrong this season. There's always that one. But they weren't even in the top 50 when it came to recruiting this last season. And I didn't see much great things out of them last year. They were an okay team. And obviously, it's always Texas basketball. This is a football school, though. Or they at least try to be. And I know they're expected to be good this season, but I don't know. I just don't feel it. What are your thoughts going in here? You had them pretty high ranked, and so did the AP. They finished 19-8 last season. They were 3rd place in the Big 12. But I think maybe the reason they're getting such great hype is because of the fact that the Big 12 is kind of experiencing a down here.
I mean, I like their coach. What's his name? I think his name's Chris Beard, Texas coach. But I think he built a squad that can easily fit together. I think it's not the best recruiting class, but he's definitely got a class that can work together. I think, and most of their guys, they get drafted into the NBA. So headlined by 3 NBA draft picks, it looks like. So they had some holes to fix. So maybe they brought in some guys that, maybe don't have the best skills at a personal level, but when you put them together, they'll make a great team. So we'll just have to see. That's why I put them in there, and I like.
Yeah, I just think I'm looking at their roster right now, and none of these guys are jumping out to me as guys that were, big recruits coming out of it.
Yeah.
They have a few younger guys, and, it's a fairly balanced mix of juniors, seniors, and but I just don't think this team is going to come into it as everybody expects. And it's obviously this team is better as a unit than any individual. So maybe that's where they're going to get it. Kind of like Baylor and Gonzaga this last season. It was more team play than individual. And that's what you need come tournament time. But I do think in the regular season, having that guy to go to is a big factor. So moving on into our rankings here. After Texas, that team up north, Michigan. I have them ranked high here. They had a phenomenal offseason when it came to recruiting. I mean, you look at their numbers. They had 2 5-stars, 3 4-stars, and 1 3-star, second overall in recruiting from this past season. What was that, Matt?
Wagner left, right? That was
there was Wagner, who's absolutely balling. But you look, this team, the last, decade, they have continued to produce teams. And any sign of this team slipping up, I haven't seen it. I mean, this continues to be a dominant basketball program. And they're in potentially the most, exciting conference to look at. And they're expected to finish first, as they did last season. And this is just another squad. I mean, you looked at from last year. They were dominant. We talked about them going into that, run there in March Madness, that they had the loss. We didn't expect them to make it past the first round. They did it anyway, and they continued to look strong. Their depth just kind of fell just short last season. They weren't able to put it together. But I love what you're seeing out of this team now, and they have a lot of young guys coming out here looking like they're going to get involved early here. And obviously, you got to love Caleb Houston. Probably one of the best young guys they brought in this past season, and Jace Howard as well. So they got a lot of young guys, and once again, not big names, but they brought in some highly talented recruits here. And obviously, these aren't the guys that you're seeing on ESPN, these last few years, but these are guys that you probably should have been seeing, because they have been some of the highest recruits in the nation over this last 4 or 5 years since they've been recruiting out of high school. But this will be a dangerous Michigan squad, and I have them actually sitting at number 2 in my overall poll. So that's how highly I see them this year, and that's coming from a guy that does not like that state up north. Matt, you had him sitting at 7. Mike had him sitting at 5. What are your thoughts on that team up north this season for basketball?
I mean, I think that, and they'll move up too. I mean, I just put them there as kind of like a starting point. I didn't feel like that I should put them up too high, but I like Juwan Howard. I like the squad he has built there. I mean, this guy was part of the, what is it? The Fab Five. Fab Five. So he knows dynasties, okay? And if you want to talk about this Michigan dynasty for past, 20 years, even with Beeline as their coach, they've been successful.
I mean, Beeline was an all-time great coach for Michigan, too.
Absolutely. I get his newspaper clip up here. But, then after him, you bring in Juwan Howard, a former player, a former leader of that Fab Five.
And a big part of the NBA.
Chris Webber. Yeah. So I think he's doing very well here, bringing in not big noise players, but players that can play together. And, that's what the Fab Five were. Those weren't big guys. Chris Webber and Juwan Howard were not the big guys coming out of high school or wherever you want to call it back in the day. I
think it was still called high school back then. So.
Yeah, I know, but there was different processes of it, processes of recruiting. It wasn't thrown out there. I didn't know if they were that big. I don't think they were, though. Usually when you hear names like Zion Williamson, it's plastered everywhere. I don't think these guys' names were. And they made that dynasty what it is. And those are the only 2 guys of the Fab Five to go into the NBA, I believe, or really make a name in the NBA, Chris Webber and Juwan Howard. So Juwan Howard had a very successful career as a player, so he puts that into coaching, and, look where it's turning. It's turning out in his favor. So.
Right, and that's for sure, and they're going to get a high spot here in our initial rankings. Coming in number 3rd, Kansas, the team expected to finish first place of the Big 12, and I just have a feeling with the way everyone's thinking about this Big 12, it doesn't look like it's garnishing a lot of respect. And you look at bracketology here, Big 12 is expected to get 5 teams in, but I think they're not expecting a lot to get past that first round. Probably Baylor, Texas, and then this Kansas team. But with Kansas right now, they're bringing in a lot of talent, and they once again had a high recruiting class. They brought in 4 4-stars, so they brought in a good infusion of youth. Maybe not the best players coming out, but this is obviously a dominant program, one of the perennial blue bloods of the sport, and you can expect them to be up there time and time again.
Yes, absolutely. I don't have too much to say on Kansas. I don't follow them as much as I do, as the other teams in this top 10. But every year Kansas is in it, so you can't always count them out. I mean, every year Kansas is picked to win, and they always have a big headline story. So we'll see here.
We'll have to see. And now coming in at number 2, our top 2 looks the same as the regular AP top 25. We have UCLA sitting at number 2, and number 1 Gonzaga. They're favored now for their second straight year to win the men's basketball national championship. But I think you can't look into that too much because of, similar to the fact we said last year, that schedule looks so easy coming out of their conference, and I think it's pretty easy again. They have a few big games that you're going to want to look out for this season in terms of competitiveness. One of them we're going to talk about a little later on the show. They have Texas coming up this Saturday. That should be the game. Let's see what this team is made of. Then November 23rd, they're going to take on UCLA, and then right after that, on the 26th, they're taking on Duke. They have Alabama on the 4th, Washington December 12th, Texas Tech on December 18th. So they are going to get a few of those big-name teams, and not to mention BYU. They'll get twice as well this season. So there's a few teams that you're like, okay, there's some guys that can make this, difficult for them. I don't think Gonzaga finishes the season at number 1, but I think they have a good chance of making a run into, bracketology. I like what they're going to bring into the season. They're obviously returning a lot of guys, and not to mention they had the number 3 overall recruiting class, 2 5-stars and 2 4-stars they brought in. So a lot of talent for this top 25 team, and obviously Gonzaga has a huge favor to win this thing all. But I also like UCLA. They're sitting at second place in our polls. I had them at 3rd. Matt, you had them in the same spot. They continue to be one of the blue bloods of the program. They didn't bring in much, but they had a good season last year, and they have enough to make a title run, and they got a lot of young guys that have developed into that right spot, and they bring in that total team that you're seeing from a lot of other groups this year. We feel like their total team is made up of guys that can do it themselves. So I think that's the biggest part you're looking at right now. They have a lot of great players that can work together. So I think that's UCLA's big favor coming into this one. But that is our official top 10 for the Casual Sports Podcast. It'll be up on our Twitter page after if you want to talk about it as well. So Matt, let's move on here out of rankings and get into some games. We have a big one to kick off the season here. Tip off the season, I should probably say. Tonight, 7 p.m., the Kansas Jayhawks against the Michigan State Spartans. Sparty's not projected well here, for the Big Ten. It's one of those teams that, they're kind of on the edge, right? We want to see what we're getting out of them. What are your thoughts on this game going into it?
I mean, this would be a big test, for Kansas. And, Michigan State, they have, time and time again, they have been a pain to play. They have had some couple players. I don't know which ones are returning. Who's that big guy from last year? I forget. But Kansas, I mean, we just talked about them. I mean, they're known to play in big games, and they're known to win big games. And, this is a big first game to start. So you can't take this lightly, okay? Even though Michigan State isn't ranked, they could very well shoot up in the rankings with a win here. So, I mean, it should be a pretty decent game to watch. I mean, it's college basketball. I like college basketball, I do. But, you start really paying attention to it, later on.
Come January, see what you get out of these first 2 months, then you get right into it come January. I mean, kind of same thing I think we see with the NBA, right? You take that first, month to work, first few months, work yourself back into watching a lot of games, and then come January, you hit your All-Star break, you're like, all right, let's go. Run the second half of the season. That's when you tell who you got, but I think this college basketball season, it's going to be a lot of winner early for a lot of these big-name teams, especially Big Ten. It's important they win out of conference early, and this is one of those games you talk about when, hey, you have to take this one out of conference because once you start playing here in the Big Ten, you're going up against some of the best teams to do it around the nation here, and, a lot of easy games to start off with here in their very first week. but I think it's a big chance for the Big Ten early in the season with Michigan State to cement themselves. If they can pick up a win here over the much favored Kansas Jayhawks, a team favored to potentially win it all by a lot of sports bettors. So if Michigan State pulls the upset here in game one, I think this just once again bolsters the fact that the Big Ten looks like they're going to potentially be bringing out the best conference in basketball once again. ACC though right up there with them this year, and it's good to see the ACC back in it.
Yes, that it is.
So Matt, let's get into some predictions then for this game here. 20 minutes left on the show. Our first prediction now. Kansas, Michigan State. Who do you got and why? No, we don't need to do scores here. It's a little too much for basketball, but
it's tricky.
Give us your who and why.
I say Kansas is going to win this game, but I say Michigan State that hangs in there for a while, and then Kansas puts the pedal on and wears them out and ends up winning the game. But I don't predict a blowout here.
I'm not predicting a blowout either. But you see this Kansas team, they come into it, they get their big offseason. They're riding a lot of highs, and a lot of people like this team. And, I had them sitting at 4th. You had them in 2nd. Mike had them at 6th, though, so maybe that's the one spot we got to look out for. He also took Michigan State in this game, so he likes the Spartans here. Big Ten is a fierce squad, but I think as the Big 12's best team this season, I think Kansas enters this playoff with a win, gives that Big 12 a little bit of a name this season, and gives them a shot come March Madness to potentially gain her a little bit more respect when you look at a Michigan State win, who is expected to finish top 25. So I'm taking Kansas. They need it on their resume early here with the Big 12 not looking like they might be the best conference this season. So Big 12 is always a danger to run one out because I think a lot of people don't watch them until come maybe March, and it becomes one of those things. You come March, you don't know anything about this Big 12, and they end up making a run on you like we saw out of teams like Oklahoma State and Baylor last season. Next game up here, the one everybody is waiting for to tip off the season once again tonight, 9:30, Kentucky Wildcats, the Duke Blue Devils, one of the best rivalries in basketball starting off. The one thing I can hope for is Dick Vitale back on the call, but keep in mind, this is Coach K's farewell tour for Duke, so it's a big moment for them, and Coach K is obviously one of the all-time greats in basketball. And we'll get to see how they finish their final season here. Matt, what's your thoughts between these two teams here? Kentucky at Duke here to start off the season.
First of all, Coach K, definitely one of the best coaches ever in college basketball-wise. And, it is time. The guy is, he's 74 years old. The guy's been coaching since, he's been coaching since 1980 at Duke. He started at Duke in 1980. Okay.
Right, and he won his first NCAA championship in 91, and he's won 4 more since then. He has 5 total championships, and he has been, a 5-time ACC Coach of the Year. He has won countless number of championships. He's won 15 ACC tournament championships, so he's definitely one of the all-time greats here for college basketball. Undoubtedly, first ballot Hall of Famer, no matter what. This team has been in this, March Madness for nearly every season. They finally didn't get it last year coming off of COVID. But, before then, you'd have to go all the way back to 1994 when they didn't get it in. So he led them to quite a few in a row there, and he's definitely one of the best all times. It took him just 3 seasons. Those first 3 years at Duke was down. 4th season, they make it to the round of 32, and then his 6th season at Duke, they make it all the way to the championship before winning it nearly a decade into his tenure there. So one of the best to ever do it. What do you think he starts off his final run with against one of his fiercest rivals in Kentucky?
I say, if we're making picks, I'm making my pick right now. I'd say Duke wins this game. I think that this is going to be a statement year last year for, Coach K. And, he's got his guys coming with him, too. He's prepping that coach, too, stepping in behind him. That coach that is going to replace him is on the bench with him. So that guy's been learning and learning. So it's going to be like he hasn't left, hopefully. But, that every time a legend like that retires, it's going to affect you a little bit, But
Right,
say
I
they win
expect them
this
to maybe
game.
have a little bit of a fall off next season, but right here,
Yeah.
when they're bringing in 3 5-star guys, this is a loaded squad. And
Oh,
I'm going with Duke here. Mike's taking Kentucky in this one. He's taking, this Kentucky team that they look okay, but Duke, they want their redemption
right.
tour here. They didn't make the playoffs for as I was just saying, the first time in like 30 years. So this is their chance, make that redemption run, the final swan song, if you will, for Coach K and
Absolutely.
his illustrious career here. It should be a fun
Absolutely.
one, and I can't wait for this one tonight. Probably the one I end up flipping on here, so it should be a good
Oh,
one on ESPN tonight at 9:30. Next
he's
game up on our slate here, Matt. Go ahead.
he's had some great players play for him before. I'm sure everybody's attributing him players so like Grant Hill and Christian Leitner, and you can even go. What was his name? We don't like him. He's in the NBA. I can't think of his name. Oh well. But the big names are Grant Hill and even Zion as well. So yeah, farewell to Coach K.
I mean, you want to look at Duke's 5 best players of his career. You have Luol Deng that went to the Heat and has a few All-Stars and championships. Shane Battier, Elton Brand,
Battier.
Grant Hill, and Kyrie Irving all coming
Kyrie
out of
Irving.
Duke. And obviously Duke has a lot of other guys that end up going to at the NBA. I mean, you look at their top 50 in school history; these are all coming from his area. And obviously, Christian Leitner's up there at number 1 of the greatest player to come out of this team. But you got Bobby Hurley, J.J. Redick, Mike Minsky, who was just before his tenure, but Chris Duhon, Sheldon Williams, Jason Williams. I mean, the list goes on and on for this team of great guys that have come out, and a lot of them have come out during this Coach K era. So it's the end of an era, but the era's got one more season to go. I'm expecting something big out of them in their final run here. But next game on our slate, the Villanova Wildcats, number 4 ranked in the nation, at UCLA, the number 2 ranked Bruins. This comes up this Friday night at 11:30 p.m. They're going into the late night hours here for some a Pac-12 matchup or Pac-12 team in the UCLA. So, what are your thoughts going to this one? I think UCLA probably potentially my heavy favorite coming into this.
Oh, absolutely. UCLA. I mean, they were high coming off last year too, and they're just riding that momentum. This should be a good game. I like the squad that they have, and they could make a run. They could. So.
All right, I'm just going to go straight into my pick here. I have UCLA taking it. Obviously, Nova is expected to have a good year, but I think UCLA, they're coming off that tournament run last season. I think they're kind of come out quick. I think they come out big, and I think they take this one here. They had an okay recruiting class. I touched on it earlier, but they're bringing back a lot of guys from that big squad last year, so I'm taking UCLA. Mike's taking Villanova in this one. He's taking a semi-underdog. Well, what do you got here, Matt?
I gotta go UCLA as well here. I like.
Man, you and I going against Mike early. He's not here to defend himself.
I like Johnny. How do you pronounce it? Juzang. Juzang is a great player.
Yeah.
He's one of the leaders of that team. He's a junior guard. He got 6'7". But that's just one of the few players that I like on there. So that's the big name, absolutely. But I think that's their undisputed leader, if you want to say. And they're going to ride him in that Villanova game. But no bash against Villanova. I like Villanova. They're a PA team, and they have made tournament runs, for years. They pulled out a couple tournament wins when people didn't think they were going to win, and they did. So don't count them out. And like
for sure. And Villanova starts the season against Mount St. Mary's tonight as well at home. So that game doesn't come up until this Friday. But next game on our slate, one of the teams that made it all the way, they couldn't close it against the Texas Longhorns. It's on the road. Gonzaga gets to host Texas Saturday night at 10:30. Number 5 versus number 1. Zags, I think, come into this looking as a heavy favorite, but I think you do have to give Texas the respect that they earned coming off of a pretty nice draft class. Or not necessarily draft class, a pretty nice recruiting class in this offseason. They did enough. They're a pretty good team, but I think this is a game you have to look at. Gonzaga, they're bringing back a lot of vengeance this season. And they can't get tripped up on themselves, especially getting all the hype coming into this year. I mean, now back-to-back years, they're the favorites to win it all, so they have to come out strong here. Before we get into our picks, Mike took Gonzaga in this one, the undisputed favorite to win it win this season. Where are you going in this one here, Matt?
I got to go with Gonzaga, too. I like Drew Timme. I like how he fits in this, this squad, his role in the squad. And, we saw that last year too. And, I think it's time Mark Field finally gets a championship. So it has to start here. So I got to pick them.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously we were talking about this Longhorn squad just a minute ago, and they're going to have Marcus Carr, one of the most talented point guards this season for the NBA, and I mean for college basketball, who could very easily finish as potentially the best guard coming into the draft. Pardon me. He led the Golden Gophers last season in Minnesota before transferring out to Texas with 19.4 points per game, had 60 threes made on the season. He earned all Big Ten first team honors. He transferred down here, and I think that's the big guy coming into it. And then you have the big guy from last season, Andrew Jones, their shooting guard. They're going to have one of the best 1-2 duos coming into the season. And then they even have a great backup point guard in Courtney Ramsey. But I think you look at this team, and I think Gonzaga is going to come out in this game with a lot of questions, right? Why couldn't they close? It came so close, and they have all the hype. They're getting all the mainstream attention. I think they fall flat in this first game. I think they come out big, but I think they go down and got a little bit of a concussion, so I'm not going to ring it too much here. But I got Texas to pull a little bit of an upset here in their first game. That one Saturday night. So I got Texas taking this one. Mike took the Zags. Are you rolling with the Zags as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to roll with the Zags too. But the point guard you were just talking about, I mean, I've kept up with him for a little bit, and this is his resurgence here. Had a good year at Minnesota last year, and he should continue that in Texas.
Yeah, that he should here. And next game up on our slate, we have Florida State. It's not necessarily a big game coming into it, but I think nonetheless a fun one to look at here. You get the big rivalry. So the in-state, Florida State. That one's Sunday at 1 p.m. So it'll be one of those Sunday games. If you're not watching NFL, you can tune into this one. But we expect any Friday, Saturday games. You're tuned in here on ysnlive.com for some playoffs. I know there's also soccer and volleyball going on as well. Some big teams for YSN. I haven't been keeping up too much on it, but some big teams. I believe Crestview is state-bound as well for soccer. So congrats to them, and go YSN teams all the way through. Let's bring home some more titles. JFK brought home the lone one last season, so let's get a few more coming in this year, I believe. So Florida State, Seminoles ranked 20 in the APs, Florida unranked, and it seems like Florida's going to be the runaway favorite here. There's not really much big news coming into this game. I think they're kind of waiting to see what the first few games, holds for these two teams coming into it.
Yes, I mean, I don't know too much for this game, but Florida State losing, Scotty Barnes, right, in the draft, right?
And he's been dominant for Toronto.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a big void that they have to fill in this game, so you gotta keep out for that.
All right, go ahead, make your pick here. Florida State, Florida. Just so you know, Mike took Florida, so give us your pick here.
Despite losing Barnes, I gotta go Florida State.
All right. Well, did I say Mike took Florida?
Yeah.
Well, technically he did. He just took the state version. So yeah, he took Florida State. You said you're going state as well.
Yeah.
I'm also rolling with state here. I mean, I don't think the SEC's got a very good group of teams this year, so I think this Florida team potentially finishes higher than what they probably should. But I don't think it's going to be a great squad. But I think it's at least a fun one to look at here. But I got Florida State as well. So our final few games here with just a few minutes left on the show. I got the Buckeyes of Ohio State. They take on Akron here. In-state game. And obviously anytime Ohio State faces in-state, you have to at least look at it for S and giggles. So you look at this one, 123rd season for Ohio State. They're expected to finish pretty high in the Big Ten this season. They're one of those top 5 5 teams coming into it. They're expected to be a top 10 team and a potential team that's favored to make it to the Final Four. They bring back a lot of big names this season, and they're bringing in some younger guys too. They could bring in Michi Johnson Jr., who's a freshman out of Cleveland, Ohio. But I think you obviously have to look first the guys they bring back, and Justice Suing, who was a key part of this team last year. Kyle Young, who just when he came back from injuries was a dominant part of this defensive group. Seth Towns, the other forward here, he was absolutely phenomenal. And of course, E.J. Liddell, potentially the biggest guy on this roster to look out for this season. And he's only 6'7", but he plays above the rim, so he's a very Zion-esque player in the terms of the way that he gets down there in the paint. And I think the big thing for Ohio State this season, they're going to play big. They only have 3 guys who are under 6'6", and those are 3 of their 5 guards. Everybody else is between 6'4" and 6'9", it looks like here, or 6'11" as I'm looking at the roster. So they're going to get a lot of size coming out this season. Potentially a guy to look out for, center graduate transfer in Joey Brunk, who'll be number 50. He's the biggest guy out there. He's 6'11". I don't know how much playing time he'll get, but if the Ohio State needs to go to a big guy here in this one, that's the guy I expect him to go to. But I think you just look at this team. They were phenomenal last season, and I think you're kind of expecting to see the same thing this time out. They lose Dwayne Washington. He transfers out. It is what it is. It's time for the rest of the guys to step up. E.J. Liddell was our second highest scoring player. He was dominant at the free throw line. He draws a lot of fouls. Just this team's looking for the next guy to step up and be that big name player who gets taken high in the next NBA draft, because we've seen time and time again, Ohio State, when they have a great player, that they get Big Ten Player of the Year and they're a second round pick and never do anything in the NBA. They got a big shot. There's a lot of nice players on this teams, and specifically with Liddell, he's probably got the best chance to make a stand here for a potential NBA contract in the next year. So I'm taking Ohio State here. I think it's a pretty obvious pick, but that's who I'm going with.
Yeah, I gotta go Ohio State too, just for pretty much everything you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty obvious one. I just wanted to look Ohio State, preview them a little bit here. How about you preview your team here real quick as well? Penn State, the Nittany Lions, they get to host none other than the Youngstown State University Penguins to kick off the season here tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Matt, we almost went to this game here. What are your thoughts going into it?
I mean, I like both of these teams. I mean, one I go to school with. I mean, I got YSU and Penn State stuff in my closet over here. So, I mean, I support both of these teams. YSU, losing a couple of those guys in the transfer portal. Darius Quisenberry leaving, and then Naz Bohannon leaving as well. But Penn State, I like their senior guard, Jaheim Cornwall. I think he's pretty good. They also have John Herrera, the big forward. He's also a senior. So there's also Miles Dredd as well. He's a senior guard as well. Those are the guys that rally around this season. Those are going to be your big names. And there's also Seth Lundy, who has got a high hand as well. So we'll have to look out for those guys. All
right, I imagine you're taking your team here, Penn State?
Yeah, I got to go Penn State here.
Well, that's a big surprise. Mike took Penn State as well, so. Yeah. I guess that leaves me, and I'm going to be the one to bite the bullet. A 20-point underdog here. Youngstown State University against Penn State. I'm rolling the upset. That's an official bell. I'll just, try not to hear it too much here. It does hurt, but I got to ring, and I got to let my boys, got to rep them here at least once early. They're not expected to do anything this season. They lose their big players, but Michael Akuche, the senior, I want to see Covington go big in this one. Rely on your seniors here. Get it done, boys. Bring home the win and upset that team in, Penn State. So I want to see it done. But Matt, let's go ahead in here into some NHL predictions. Then we'll wrap up the show after the NBA as well. So coming out here, St. Louis Blues, the Winnipeg Jets here. This one today, 8 p.m. Go ahead, give me your pick here. I'm taking the Blues. So did Mike. You gonna flip the other way, take the Jets?
No, I gotta roll Blues too. They're 7-2-1. They're 4-1-1 away, and they had some great players. I like David Perron. the guys got 6 goals, but most importantly, 5 assists. So getting the
Yeah, I think the one big team you look
else.
at here, we got to move quickly into this one, Matt.
Yeah.
The scoring differential, right, between these two teams, 37 goals for both, but you look defensively, 25 for the Blues, 32 goals against for the Jets. So it's just that defense a little bit better on the Blues side. That's why we're all taking them here. Then another game tomorrow night, 7 p.m., the Washington Wizards take on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm rolling Cavs. Mike's taking Cavs. What do you got for us here, Matt?
Who do you think? I got to go Cavs, too. We have the chance to get in first place tomorrow if the Bulls lose, too.
There you go.
So if we win, they lose, we're in first. Let's go.
That's it. That's going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Beretta. That's Matt Morrison. Make sure to come on back tomorrow for our college football Top 10 Power Hour up next here on YSNLive.com. That checks us out here. See you tomorrow.